Hello. So now today we'll be discussing about friend. So we'll be discussing about a friend class and a friend function. Before that, just look at this class in which there is a class A with a private data member called A. So now what I'll try to do is I'll create an object of class A, and we know that since the variable A in this object is private, I cannot access it directly like so. So let's actually confirm it. So here it tells that the data member A of class A of integer data type is private within this context, and hence we cannot directly access it. But there may be some need wherein we want or we allow some other functions to be able to access our private data members. That is where the friend concept comes in. So we can either make a friend, we can either make a class or a function to be a friend. So in my given class, what I can do is I can allow another class or a function to be a friend, which then allows them to access my private or protected data members directly. That is using the dot operator. So, for example, over here, let's first go through the friend class and then we'll go towards friend functions. Again, what we do is if in my class I declare another function or a class to be my friend, then that function or class can access my private or protected data members as well. So in this class A, what I've done is I have a private member A. I have a default constructor. I have another parameterized constructor. And this is a notation in which you can directly assign the value of A, in which the first A represents my data member, and second A is the parameter which I'm passing. And what this will do is it will basically assign the value of my parameter to my data member, right? And then I have a function called modify a, which increases the value of a by 11, show a, which shows the value of a by 11. Now I have another class B in which similarly I have a private data member, I have a default constructor, a parameterized constructor, a modify function, and I have some more functions over here. Now what I want to do is I want to allow B to be able to access my A, meaning I want to allow some function in B so that it can either take in my an object of class A as a parameter and be able to access A this data member A directly using the dot operator, or it can create a new object, and even there it will be able to access a data member directly. We know that within the class definition, if we have a member function, we can directly use it use or access the variable a directly over here. And even if I pass another object as a parameter, I will be able to directly access uh, the data member of that object directly using the dot operator. But if a function does not belong to this class, that is not possible. Now, what I'm doing is I have declared the the class B as a friend. Now, what this tells to the compiler is that class A is telling that class B is my friend, and so any function in class B can directly access my private data member as it would if it were my own member function. What that means? So, what does that mean? So here I have a function called modify a using b, in which I take a as a parameter, and then what I'm doing is I'll print the value of a using the dot operator. So in that object, whatever the value of a is there, I'll access it using the dot operator. And what I'll do is I'll again modify the value again using the dot operator to increment it by 100. And what else I can do is I created another function, and here what I'm doing is I'm creating a new object, initializing it with the value of 21. Okay, let's rename it. Right. Okay. So what I'm doing here again is I'm creating a new object by passing the parameter as 21. So obj.show a should give me 21, and then see out. Again, I'm accessing the data member of this object a directly using the dot operator. So when we define a class to be a friend of another class, the the class which becomes the friend, which is b in this case, can directly access the data member of a. Any object which is mentioned in these functions, in whichever function we define in a, in b, can directly access the data members of a using the dot operator. So that is about friend class, in which all the functions of b can access my data member. Now what if I don't want all the functions of b, or I only want a certain function to be able to access my data member? In that case, we use what is called a friend function. So let's look at the first example. Do not pay heed to this line just yet. So I have a class C in which there is a private data member called C. Again, a default constructor, a parameterized constructor, a function called show C, which shows the value of C to the console, which prints the value of C to the console. And then what I tell is, then I have a member function called show C, which outputs the value of C to the console. Following which, what I've done is there is a function called increment, which is now a friend function of mine, meaning this increment function can directly access my private data members. uh, yes, so be in any way possible, it will be able to access my private data members, be if you pass it as an pass the object of C as an argument, or create a new object within that within the body of that function itself. So either way, now my increment function is allowed to access my private data member. That is what I do over here. So I do a void increment. Here I'm defining the function in which it takes a C object, okay, an object of class C as a reference parameter. And then using the dot operator directly, I'm incrementing the value of that particular object's data member called C. Then so this now what this is, it's a more global function. Okay, so this function does not actually belong to any other class. So this can be used directly, wherein I can simply go c c of no c obj2 of 10, and I can simply call increment obj2, and this will work. So we see that the function increment itself is a global function. It is not associated to any other class. Now, what if we want to befriend, or actually make another member function of another class to be our friend? So this is what the example over here I'm doing. So what I've done here is, there is a class D in which there is a function called void D increment C, meaning what I mean by this function name is that this particular member function of class D will increment C, and it takes the C object as a C's object as a parameter. And what I then do is, in the definition of class C, I declare it to the compiler that I have a friend function whose return type is void, belongs to class D, and its name is D increment C, which takes in a C object, a C classes object as a reference. Now, what then this tells to the compiler is that now I allow D, which is I allow this function of D to access to access C's data members. So now in the definition of this function, I can directly access C using the dot operator as shown in the examples before. That's what I'm doing here. So void D increments C takes in an object, and obj.c plus equal to 100. So let's compile it to see if we have any errors. So make friend. Oh, I'm still using this example. Cool. Make friend. So there are no blatant compilation errors. Now let's see. Now let's try and observe the outputs and corroborate what our hypothesis is. So initially, what we told that okay, B is a friend class to A. So let's create an object of A class. So A obj of 11, B obj2 of 10. Now what I'll do is I'll call the function modify A using B, and I'll pass the A object as a parameter. What this is supposed to do is it'll increment the value of A by 100, and before that prints its value itself. So let's do an obj dot show A. Then we do an obj2 dot modify A using B, and we pass obj1 over here. Oh, sorry, obj, and we do an obj dot show A again. So we see that since value is initially 11, obj.show A will show 11, then A using B. So within this function, we also get the value 11, following which it is incremented by 100. So obj.A becomes 111, which is then printed out using obj.show of A, which tells us that the same obj's A is being incremented. So this was about a friend class. Now let's try and see first the global function which we have done. So for class C, we create an object with a and initialize it to 100 first, and then we use the increment function. And what the increment function will simply do is it'll add 10 to the current value of C and print it to the console. So then I call the global function called increment on the object, compile my function, compile my program and call it. So we see that the value 110 is being printed. So I initialized it with 100, then add 10 to that, and it's getting printed to my console. Then next, let's see how we use a friend function, which is a member function of another class. So in my case, what it means is D should be able to increment my value of C over here. So I create an object of D class. So D obj2. Now obj2 dot D increment C will take in C's value as an argument. And what it'll do is uh, it'll increment the value of obj's data member C by 100. And we also have a function called show C, so we can do that. So let's do a show C before. So obj dot show C. We increment the value using our friend function, and then we again do a obj dot show C. So we see that initially it is 100. When we call the friend function D increment C, it is a function of class D, which takes in C as a parameter, but it is able to access the object data member C directly using the dot operator, increments it by 100, which is then reflected on the object obj itself, because show C then shows that the value is 200. So this has been all about friend functions and friend class. Thank you.